Isn't it wonderful to sit in the sun? The very, very grasping end of winter. Most of February has kind of looked like this, and I've been walking in the mud and the rain and the drizzle. So one sunny day, sat outside of my nature journal, really has made all the difference. Hi there, my name is Alex Boone. I make nature journals, and I teach other people to do the same at the naturejournalingcircle.com. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my February pages, and also going for a couple of nice walks in the Devon countryside. This year I'm working on a project to depict the microseasons here in my home in East Devon in the UK. I hope you'll follow along and watch me fill the journal this year. The robins have been very territorial and displaying courtship and behaviours. I wanted to show this as one of my microseasons, so I'm just doing a practice page here. I'm using Scrim watercolours. They have a wonderful metallic watercolour pan that you can use. As you can see, when I painted the background, I left areas blank so that I could paint the robin directly onto the white paper. I'm now going to use Derwent Inktense, my favourite medium for painting, and I'm going to paint in the robin. I'm using my studio pan set from Inktense, but I've also swatched out some colours from the pencil range that I'd like to use. I've put them on this separate paper palette so I can lift them onto my painting when I'm ready. I quite often work like this, with certain colours that I know that are in the pencil range that I really like for whatever reason. There's some that I've set out especially for robins actually. The one at the bottom there is called Burnt Orange, and that one's really useful for robins. So when I have some of them that I kind of want to use, I set them out on the side like that. And I mix everything else using the pan set that you can see there. But I do also use the pencils. This is quite a quick painting. It's just a practice in my little practice journal. Here you can see the process of using this paper palette. I've just swatched out one of the pencils, one called Oak, and I'm now painting that in layers onto my page. Sometimes I put the darkest areas in first, like these marks of the layering of the feathers on the wings. I'm putting them in burnt umber, using the burnt umber pencil on my paper palette. And what I'll do is I'll just paint over the top of them with the natural brown from the pan set. When it dries, you'll be able to see the burnt umber layer showing through, and that one has dried permanent underneath. One of my favourite bits when I'm working is to put in the animal's eye. So I'm just going straight in with black on this one. If this was a final painting, I'd be spending much longer on it, getting some serious nuance in that eye, working into it with a little bit of Payne's grey and some other blues as well. This is great for now. It gives me an idea of what it's going to look like. In the final painting, I'll be using actual gold leaf in the background, but you'll be able to see that soon in my main journal. I've come out onto the cliff tops today. Originally it was because the sun was shining and I was feeling really optimistic. Even though it's still February, I thought, oh man, I'd really like to go up the cliffs and hear some birds. Maybe the Skylarks will be singing. Yeah, I know, I'm like 2 months early for that. But nothing beats a little bit of optimism. So I've come out here onto the cliff tops anyway to see what sorts of things I can find. And although the pages that you saw earlier on in this video, I'm kind of in January still, I'm still kind of working out my paintings for January. It's the end of February now in actual time, and I've got to be looking for things to be painting for the next few nature journal pages. So although I've got a lot to catch up on in the studio, I can't exactly spend all my time indoors catching up, otherwise the February micro seasons will be lost. So it's a really good incentive to actually get outside and go looking for things. Though out on the cliff tops here today, everything's looking super kind of quiet and sort of empty. There's not a whole lot of bird song up here. There's a lot of wind, you can probably hear that on the microphone. The sun's shining on the sea, it's looking kind of beautiful. But in terms of kind of nature things to point out, there wasn't so much. We had the dog's mercury and the hedges and the path back that way through the wooded part. They were starting to come up, and there's lesser celandine coming up, some stitchwort here and there. So there's things to be looking out for, but they're all still in a really kind of early stage. There's nothing that I'm really feeling that I'd like to do a painting of. In the next vlog, you'll see me gathering lots of these small plants for pressing. So I'm going to be making a pressed leaf page to show this emergence of the new growth. But that was really happening kind of in January sort of time, so I don't think it's quite right for February. I'm going to keep looking. I can't believe it. I was actually right. Did you hear that? That's a skylark. One just went up over the hedge just over here, and I was right. One sunny day at the end of February, and we have skylarks singing. And that was just what I wanted to find out here. It's kind of, I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just go and see, you know, they may be early, it's a nice day, they might go up. And I love it when I'm right. I've been out for a little while and the skylarks haven't come back. I sat here for a little while and worked on my nature journal. Just a few little observations, a quick little sketch. I've been up here half an hour since I heard the skylark. So I was sat in the wind and doing a bit of nature journaling, and they haven't come back. I think it was just one really, really lucky moment. I was just here at the right time. And of course that means that I absolutely must include that as one of my micro seasons for February. It's interesting. I'm thinking, how am I going to depict a skylark? Because I have very few photos of them. They're always so sort of high up in the sky that it's quite hard to really draw them. I have some stock photos that I've got of them on the ground. They're not actually my photos. I may incorporate some of these, but as I said earlier, I'm quite far behind on my best journal pages, so it'll be a little while before I need to worry about trying to draw the skylarks. Maybe I'll be able to see them again before then and get some more photos of my own. But for now, I'm just so happy to have seen them, and it's kind of made my day. It's kind of made my February. It really means that spring is on the way. One of the biggest features of this February has been continued drizzle, and always feeling a little bit like you're looking at everything through the mist. I wanted to work out a way to capture this, so I did a painting of this starling, and I kind of wanted to see if I could use tissue paper to get the effect of mist. As you see here, it works really well, especially if you've got a very strong painting underneath. So in your underneath layers, which I did with the Inktense, and also a black marker, you really go strong with those colours so that they'll show through. I'm going to be using my favourite EVA glue now to glue it on. I'm painting the entire page with a layer of the EVA and then being really, really careful and gentle with it. I'm going to stick the tissue paper down over the top. I'll show you a little bit more of this process in just a moment. As you can see, you get a wonderful texture. It's something about how the glue and the ink work together. Really, really interesting, and you really get that effect of looking through the mist at your subject. One very wonderful thing about where I live is that we get a lot of lapwings, and they overwinter here on the lagoon, which is an artificially made inlet next to the River Axe. We have hundreds of them, and sometimes they all take to the air like this and flock around together. Because this is something that happens a lot at this time of year, I really wanted to add this as a painting in one of my microseasons, using this misty tissue paper effect. I started in my practice journal, and I did a painting in the bottom layer straight onto the journal page in Inktense. You can see I've gone very strong with the colours. Then over the top I'm laying my tissue paper, which I've drawn in fine liner. All of these tiny little bird shapes. I glued it down, and here's my practice page finished. Let's look at this in a little bit more detail in the real page. Here's my reference image. This is a still from the video that I showed you a moment ago. I've done my painting again, and I've put these sheets of spare paper in between the pages to protect them, so I can get right to the edges when I'm working in my paint. Here it is, dry and ready to go. Now on a separate piece of paper, I've laid my tissue over the top, and I'm drawing every single bird in fine liner. Make sure you don't do this over the top of your journal, because some of that fine liner will transfer through the tissue paper. So be careful about this and draw it on a surface where it's okay for that little bit of transfer to happen. Now I've just laid it over the top of the journal, and I'm looking at how the painting looks through the tissue paper and marking out a few areas where I think a few more birds could be. I'm doing this in pencil, and I'll add them in a moment onto the tissue paper. Now I'm putting the tree shapes in onto the background, again using Derwent Inktense, the Studio Pan set, and some brushes, just synthetic, standard, cheapo brushes that I've got kicking around the house. I'm quickly painting this in, and I'm painting it in much stronger than I would do if I was just doing this as a painting, and that's because I know that that tissue paper is going to be laid over the top, so I want it to show through. It takes a little while to do this, and I'm kind of working slowly, putting in all of the fine details of those branches. This is what the painting looks like when it's finished. I've got the skyline, and when that tissue paper goes over the top, this will show through beautifully. So I can test it here and have a little look. When you lay the tissue over the top, make sure you press it down, because that's what it's going to actually look like when the glue is holding it down tight. Otherwise your painting can just look a little bit indistinct if you let the paper bubble up away from the bottom layer. This is one of the pieces that has transferred through from another drawing of the lapwings, and I just kind of wanted to test and see what it would look like before looking at the final one. I've now glued down this page, and I'm just going to show you now how I'm going to do the second side. Make sure when you glue the first page that you press right into the spine of the book, to make sure that you don't end up with a bubble at where the journal opens. I'm painting on pure EVA glue with a large brush, and you need to do this quite quickly because this is going to dry and you want to be laying the tissue down on the page before that actually happens. Nice and fast, make sure everything is well and truly painted over and you're trying to get down towards those edges. Now comes the tricky part. We're going to fold the paper back over and try to work out from the spine towards the edges. You may have to pull the paper, you may need to peel it back and shift it slightly, and try to keep on smoothing it down. It's inevitable that there will be a few wrinkles, but I think that these just add to the effect, so don't worry too much about them. Be careful not to keep on pulling and resetting your paper, at some point the glue really will start to take it, and you'll be starting to rip both the tissue paper and the paint from the layer underneath if you persevere. Press into the edges and use your brush to kind of make sure that you've definitely painted everything, adding a little bit more glue here and there if you need to. Now, to remove the excess tissue paper, I do it by a tearing method because it leaves a lovely soft edge. I press down with a ruler and very, very carefully tear away the excess tissue. You have to be patient with this process. This video is in fact sped up. It took me quite a while to do it. If you find that there's somewhere where you have accidentally torn a little bit of the tissue, take some more glue and a spare bit of tissue paper and just glue it on, as you can see here. It's very unlikely that you're going to be able to see the join in too much detail unless you're looking really, really closely. And here's what it looks like when it's finished. There's something very special about this misty effect that you can achieve this way. Notice that the birds are drawn onto the top layer. I recommend that you definitely do draw the birds onto the tissue before you glue it down onto the paper, because the effect of the glue passing through the tissue may affect how that ink lays on if you don't do this first. Here's the two journals together. I'm really happy with how these turned out. There was just a little bit of time left in the first few weeks of February to get out for a few more walks. I'm going to leave you with this footage of down by the coast, walking on the cliff tops near Branscombe. Thank you so much for joining me today for this vlog. I really hope that you'll subscribe to see more. I'm going to be vlogging every couple of weeks this year, the process of this journal and all of the places I've been in nature that I've seen there. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.